Now let's talk about Gitmo, the world's most feared prison camp. Now, what we understand is that what was once the world's most dreaded facility, that is Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, had fallen into, despair regarding the fact that it needed dire repair, but has officially been closed down and the prisoners have been moved to another facility as we speak. What we also understand is the fact that Gitmo or Guantanamo Bay was once the epicenter of international outcry and concern regarding human rights violations done on the behalf of United States military against some of the most dreadful criminals known to mankind. You see, the conception of Gitmo came into play after 9/11 happened and the United States declared an international war against terrorism. What we understood then that there was the Patriot Act that came into play. And ever since the Patriot Act came into play, there was intense crackdowns on terrorist organizations as well as any terror links on American soil as well as on international accord, which ended up with the killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, in Otmanabad. What we also understand is the fact that once this logistical nightmare came into play, we understood that prisoners were moved from American soil as well as from various other parts of the world. And once they were at Gitmo, they were susceptible to numerous atrocities that were committed upon them. Some might say that it was justified in order to get the essential information out of them that was really required to try and decode this entire foundation of terror that was laying its roots on an international level. And others say that a lot of innocent people got caught in the crossfire. There have been numerous movies that have been created about Gitmo, and some famous instances have also been recorded wherein innocent people were picked up from the streets right after 9/11. People that were well suspected of being involved in terror activities but were merely just Muslims. And they were taken to Gitmo and interrogated, but no information could be extracted from them. And the authorities believed that they were suppressing information rather than sharing it. What we also saw when it comes to Gitmo is the fact that a lot of people were misidentified. A lot of Sikhs were picked up, a lot of Punjabis were picked up, and this was only because of the color of their skin. So a lot of racism outcry began and things got very messy real quick. Yes, a lot of terror organizations were cracked down upon because of the interrogation tactics applied at Gitmo and the essential information that was extracted from there, but the outfall of this was just horrendous. Prisoners at Camp 7, now Gitmo is made up of a few different camps, but Camp 7 was essentially where the worst of the worst were harbored. So, upon Gitmo finally being closed down, we understood that prisoners at Camp 7 were transferred to a facility adjacent to where the other detainees on the base were held. As a part of the US Southern Command, this was an effort to increase operational effectiveness and efficiency. Now, President Biden tries his level best. Even under the Obama administration, he tried his level best to shut down Gitmo altogether. But it's not that easy. You see, the president, even the vice president, they don't have the end all be all power when it comes to shutting down a facility like this. You need approval from Congress. That means you need votes from Congress itself. And the Congress is split right down the middle. What happens with Gitmo on a larger scale in terms of shutting the entire facility down is still up for speculation. But what we do understand is that major players in the game in terms of prisoners have been moved to various different facilities. You see, the total number of prisoners moved, however, is not disclosed. Earlier reports said that 7 prisoners were transferred, but that is little in comparison when we understand the total number of prisoners held at Gitmo is upwards of 40. Now, among those held there were 5 charged with war crimes for their roles in planning and providing logistical support in the 9/11 terror attacks. So by no means are those people going to be put into any other facility wherein, they can either be broken out or compromised in terms of their effectiveness when it comes to reaching with the outside world. You see, President Biden intended to close down Gitmo, but as we mentioned earlier, Congress didn't give him the right approval then. When it comes to today in the year 2021, we might just get the right approval from Congress, and who knows, maybe Gitmo goes away for good. But for now, what we understand is the fact that Congress has to vote on either bringing these 5 individuals who were charged with the 9/11 roles onto American soil to face trials, or what we understand is that they are going to be sent to another black site, if you will. A black site is essentially something that's off the grid, locations of which are undisclosed, but are super high security prisons that the United States has cultivated across the globe, usually in places that have lesser human rights, usually in places that the United States can get around a few laws of international accord with, usually a few places where human rights violations are not treated with that much intensity. That is exactly where problems start to arise. We've seen protests erupt, we've seen international outcry erupt. You see, innocent people, when put into the line of fire, can be quickly turned into your enemy. Innocent people, when treated the same way as terrorists are treated, can quickly change their mentality to incite some amount of revenge upon you. And that is the plot line of numerous movies that were created after the whole Gitmo scenario came into play and news of Gitmo broke way back in the day. Now, what we also understand is the fact that enhanced interrogation techniques was something that was in the news, in the epicenter when Gitmo's news broke out in the first place. Horror stories started to come out about inhumane interrogation techniques that were used in Guantanamo Bay, but there were people that were on both sides of the issue. People that were giving credit where credit was due in terms of getting insightful information that was leading to real life activities, real life instances being counteracted, as well as some very good intel that led to the capturing or killing of numerous heads of terror organizations. But then there were those people that were treated the same way, interrogated the same way, but were merely everyday, day to day civilians who had nothing to do with any terror organization, had nothing to do with anything wrong. They were merely trying to make a living in the United States or elsewhere, but were caught in the crossfires. There was an infamous case about one individual who was purely busted because he shared the same name as a terror group leader. You see, sharing the same name as someone doesn't make you a terrorist. You don't know that person. There are hundreds of Hitlers around the world. Yes, not a very common name anymore, but you can best believe that you can find a few Adolf Hitlers out there. People who are actually named Adolf Hitler. And they aren't Hitler. The same goes with Stalin. The same goes with the biggest names and atrocities against humans. But that doesn't make them the people who actually committed those atrocities. And that was something that was frontline and center when it came to human rights violations. What we understand by the end of the story is that Gitmo is finally on the verge of being shut down completely. And whether you're on this side of the fence or that, whether you're up for bringing these people onto United States soil and giving them a trial and then putting them in some amount of high security facilities onto the United States itself, or do you believe that black sites and offshore facilities are built just for these purposes and they should be adhered to these purposes and they should still exist across the spectrum, even though we aren't aware of how many black sites exist today? But we can best believe that they do exist out there and they are in places that you can never comprehend.